Perpetual motion is a very exciting piece. I love playing it. And one of the things that makes it exciting is the articulation. Hi, I'm Clay from the Cello.online, and today in this video we're going to talk about the articulation in perpetual motion. Be sure to stick around to the end. I have a very special resource for you to help you with practicing the articulation here in perpetual motion. Now, in Suzuki Book 1, there are instructions, actually, about playing with a very stopped bow. The instructions say to stop the bow or to create a short note after every single eighth note. Your teacher, along with you, will determine exactly how short that note is going to be and how much the stop is going to be, because it varies. It can be different. It can be a really, really short staccato note with a really, really hard stop of the bow, like this. Or you could choose to make it just a nice détaché. Whatever the final decision is about the articulation, whether it be a really, really hard stop of the bow with a really, really short staccato note or just a nice détaché, the point is that there should be a space between the notes. This is what gives the piece its energy. It's what makes it exciting, is this space between the notes. It's kind of short. Well, you can play it détaché. That's not the same as short, right? We want to make a distinction between those two things. But, you want the piece to have joy. When it's legato, which it should never be, okay, not optional, it should never be smooth and connected, because if it's too smooth, or if it's really smooth at all, it loses that excitement, it loses the energy. I'll demonstrate. And notice on all those examples, I really tried to keep the tempo the same to, stress the point that the articulation, we're not talking about tempo or slowing down or speeding up, changing the energy of the piece. It really is the articulation that changes the piece. And if you stop to think about it, it makes sense. Think about other things in our world that you think of forward motion, where you think of having a lot of energy. Perpetual motion. One thing that comes to mind is a train. When we think about a train sound, or that sound that we make sometimes when we're playing, maybe we're playing trains with our children, and we go, this sort of constant, but it's not exactly constant, right? There's a little diminuendo that happens in there. There's a little something that changes in between each iteration. There's, a space between the emphasis at the beginning of it and the emphasis of the next iteration of it, and this constant, rolling, moving forward, the space is what gives it the energy. I also think about a Newton's cradle, with the marbles going back and forth. One side stops and the other side keeps going. There's a pause on one side. There's a space. There's something that changes in between each iteration, and this kind of space, this kind of pause, for whatever reason, we would think that, when something is continuous, that would be energetic. But actually, if you think about it in music, things which are very, very smooth and continuous are often very ethereal, all right? They're sort of without energy. They're very calming, right? We don't want calm. We want motion. We want perpetual motion. We want to move forward. We want the excitement of it, okay? So, how do we achieve all this on the cello? What do we do to get the space in between the notes? First, make sure that the goal is really clear in your mind about what you want to achieve. I want to achieve a space in between the notes. So my first thing is to set the goal and to listen for the space. So I'm listening. I'm making sure that I, just put the space in between the notes. How am I doing that? Well, the bow is what is making the articulation happen, right? So I have to focus on my bow hand, all right, and what my fingers are doing and what the bow is doing. So I'm going to make sure that I'm playing down here in the lower half. because this is where I get lots of energy. This is where I get lots of nice space in between the notes, playing down here at the balance point. I also want to focus on what my fingers are doing. Are my fingers on the bow correctly? Okay, hanging on the bow. Lots of videos on the channel here about bow hold and how the fingers go, so check those out. But I want to make sure my fingers are contacting the bow correctly, that my fingers are flexed. Because it's this flexing of the fingers that really stops the bow and creates the articulation, which is one of the teaching points here of perpetual motion, which brings us full circle about why we put the space in there to begin with. Why stop the bow? Well, the reason to do it well is twofold: to give the piece energy, but also to teach your right hand more control, okay? When I have to stop the bow, I have to exert a lot of control over the bow, and I have to make sure that I exert that control in the right way with flexed fingers on the bow correctly. When I'm just playing kind of loosey-goosey, all right, and actually, to make a true legato, I have to have my hand on the bow correctly as well anyway, right? All right, but if I'm a student learning, if I'm a beginner, if I'm here in book 1 playing perpetual motion, the hard stop really puts my fingers and my bow hold to the test, okay? I really have to hold this thing correctly. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it's just so important to progressing here on the cello. All right, so I'm checking, I'm listening, I'm checking for the space, I'm checking to make sure that my fingers are flexed, okay? I also have to have my elbow at the right. If my elbow is dragging over here, it's really hard to stop the bow. All right, so elbow, fingers flexed, listening for the space, okay? Get the articulation correct. Now, I promised you a resource. I have created practice timers to go along with this video. So what's a practice timer, you might ask? Great question. If this is your first time encountering a practice timer on this channel, you can check out the video all about them and how to use them right here. If you've already seen that, or you want to just jump right into using practice timers, you can take your pick right here. We have 1 minute, 3 minute, and 5 minute. Whatever suits your practice style the best, check them out. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.